When someone gets started with WebSockets, I think the first application they would be building is a chat application. And what they ignore is the way they choose to store the chats, and where they are going to store the chats. And storing is out of the question when you start with something like building a chat application. And that's okay, because to keep things simple, people build some chat applications. But the choice of storing the chats is has been a question for different companies, and they tend to store in different ways and in different techniques. And so in this video I just want to share my opinions, or share my opinions on how chats can be stored, and what is a better way of doing it, not the best way, but how things can be improved when the traffic raises, or there's some or if you can say, if you want to scale, what you can do. So the first thing that when you hear the word storage is the database, and here is a database. And one thing that you can do is whenever you chat with one person, for every message you can send an query to database to store the message sent from an user to another user. And when you are storing chats, you have to also keep in mind the reliability, or like the fault tolerance of the system, because when you're sending a message and suddenly the system goes off, then the message should be persistent. So that also has to be taken care. So when you're using DB, one thing is that it's too costly, because there are thousands of messages in a single conversation. So think like, even if 10 users are using, that's a lot of messages and a lot of queries to the DB. So for every single message, sending a query is like a bad idea. So what can we do? One thing we can do, as I said, you can send a query to like every message, or you can send like every n messages. You can store these messages in the system or in the server, on the server, and you can send that when the message limit is like, let's say 100. When 100 messages reaches, then you can send a query to DB inserting this 100 messages. So where are you going to store these n messages before sending them to DB? So that's one question. One thing you can do is that in memory, you can say storage, like you can store that on the server. But the problem is that whenever the server shuts down, all the data gets lost. So that's one problem. So another, I think, most obvious thing that people tend to do is to use some cache, and to use something like Redis or memcache to store these messages temporarily, and then to shift that messages to DB when a limit reaches. So the property or the constraint here is not the number of messages, but it can also be like time, or every 1 hour you can shift the messages to the DB, or maybe some other constraint as well. But this is just a constraint, it can change, but the concept is going to be the same. So in this case, let's think we are going to use Redis. Then what we can do is that we can store in Redis, and then shift for every n messages, you can shift from Redis to DB, and then clear out Redis. That's a choice. If you want to clear out, you can clear out, or not. You need not. And Redis is actually it's pretty much scalable. If you deploy multiple clusters of a single Redis instance, I think it's pretty much scalable for like I think it can store up to 10k 20k messages, I don't know, but it's scalable. Smaller applications tend to store everything in Redis only and not using any database, and that's a good idea too when things tend to be less complex and less traffic is going to be hitting. So that's one thing. In this video I just want to implement something like a chat application, but with the storage facility. So this is not going to be like one-on-one, it's going to be a simple, very simple kind of group chat kind of thing. So where one user sends to message to the room and everyone can see it, and every new user coming in will see the past messages also. And even if the user sends the messages and then reloads the page, he will see the messages he has sent and all the previous messages. So for this we'll be using Redis, and let's use NodeJS as usual, and we are not using any database for now because we are going to be storing everything on Redis itself. So yeah, let's get started. I have created a folder called Redis chat, and which will be creating our application in. So let's do an npm init -y to create a template of package.json for us, and I want to install some packages now. I'll be starting with Express, and of course we need Redis. And for the front end, let's just use a simple templating engine, let's say EJS, and we'll be using SocketIO because it's a chat application and we will be needing WebSockets as well. So the modules have been installed. So let me clear my screen, and first I want to let's see how the directory is. So I want to create a new file called index.js. Okay, so let me go into that index.js. So the first thing I want to set up is the views directory, which means I want to send them an index.ejs file and serve content from there. So, and before that, I also I want to build a socket server. If you have dealt with sockets before, I think this would be obvious for you. So let's say const express is equals to require express, and app would be an instance of express. This is some just common Node.js boilerplate, and I want to listen on, let's say, 5000, and I also want to import HTTP. Let's say require HTTP, and SocketIO also I want to require that. So now I want to create a server using HTTP. You can say const server is equals to http dot create server, and I want to send an instance of app into this server. SocketIO. I want to send server into this SocketIO, and I want to listen to the server as well. So that would be this would be returning an IO instance which we can use to listen to or emit events. So I want to listen to port 5000. So instead of usually we'll say app.listen, but instead of that we can say server.listen, because that's where our IO has been attached to. So I can say to the port, and then a callback says we can just do a console.log there. Let's say server at port. And I also want to set our app engine to view engine to EJS. So I can say app.set my view engine to EJS, so that we can this should be serving .ejs files. And now I want to quit this, and let's see. Now I want to create a views folder, and inside views I want to create an index.ejs, and I also want to create chat.ejs files. So this index.ejs is going to be an entry page where you will be entering your name, and chat.ejs is going to be where the chat messages appear and you can send messages to that room. So we can go into views/index.ejs, and I want to set up some HTML boilerplate. And you can say what I want to have is an input text field and a button below that, so that you can enter your name, and you click enter, it goes to the next page, and you can send messages as that username. So for that I want a form here, and inside this I will be having an input of type text, and let's say that ID is going to be username, and the name is going to be username as well. And we'll put two breaks, row breaks, and then we can say we can have a button which says enter, and I want a placeholder for this too, which should be saying, let's say, username. So let me split the screen. And now what I want to do is, when we hit the /root, request and response, and when we hit the /root, I want to serve the index.ejs file. So we can say you can say render index. No need of typing .ejs, because that we have set the view engine to EJS. Let's quit, and let's run using node index.js. You can see the server is at 5000. Let's go here and see what's happening. Okay, we can see the username input field and the button we just put on right there. So I want this server to be running. I don't want this to stop. So I'll open a tmux session. So this is not required, but you can just open another tab of terminal and you can just say a node index.js. But I also want to install nodemon now, because I want to I want the server to restart instantly when I make some changes. So yeah, nodemon is installed. Now I can just say nodemon and it starts the server for me and it listens to that server. I'll be opening another tab and I'll be going into, let's say index.js, and let me open index.ejs as well. And here you can see that whenever we click enter right now, there's nothing happening. You can see that it's sending an empty, it's sending a username, but there's no one listening to the to this event or to this route at the backend. So what I want to do is I want to send, whenever I click submit button, I want this button to be of type submit, and whenever I click the submit button, I want to hit the /chat route, and we can write that route here. Let's say out.get. This is going to be get route with route /chat, and we'll be getting request and response. And you can see that we will be getting this username with this name username. We'll be getting that in as request.query.username. Right? We can actually store this, let's say, in a variable called username, and then we can render the chat.ejs and send the username there. So you can save that. So what I'm doing is that I'm just pulling the username and then I'm rendering chat.ejs and sending username there. But here we have not yet built or written any single line of code in chat.ejs. So let's open chat.ejs and let's do the same thing here. Let's say chat. So now let's go here, refresh this, and let's say name and enter, and you can see that Redis chat is opening up, and we actually are sending our username variable, but it's not just visible right now, so we'll be doing that afterwards. One thing I want to do is that now I have access to this IO variable. What I want to do is I want to, whenever an user joins the chat, I want to send an event which says this user has joined. So before that, we have to set up sockets in chat.ejs. In order to do that, we can write a script tag here which will actually connect to the socket. Let's say socket is equals to we can say IO of HTTP localhost, and our server is running at 5000, so we'll say 5000. This IO is not defined yet. This is actually inside a CDN. Let's define that too, and here it is. So this IO variable is going to be pulled from this CDN, and we can access that here. So now we can listen to some events like socket.on, let's say joined, and we get the username here. We have actually not yet emitted that event, so let's say io.emit. Let's say joined here, and let's send the username. So what this means is that whenever anyone joins this application, we can just emit an event saying that to a channel named joined, and I want to send username as data. And you can also see that I'm using IO here. We can also use socket in any case we want, but I want to use IO here because I want to emit this event to every user who is connected to this application. And now before even starting this, I want to create a div with an ID joined, and what I want to do is I want to create an let's say an element. It's a document dot create element, and I want that element to be, let's say, h5 element, and I want that element's inner text to be let's say this username has joined. So that's the text I want to put out there, and I want to attach this or append this element to this div. So what we can do is we can do document dot query selector, and I want to select that ID. So I'll say hashtag join, and I want to say append the child to that, which is the element. I want to append element to that. So let's save this and let's start, and I want to open another tab, and then let's say some name here, let's say my name, and you can see that I'm in this the first tab. I'm getting the user Mano has joined. So that would be in the case for every other user who is connected to this application. So now that the events are working, I want to move forward, and what I want to do is I want to inside this chat.ejs, I want to have an kind of input and a send button, so that users can send messages. So let me do that here. So let's create a div for that about this. So let's say div, and the ID is going to be message, and inside this div I want to have an input of type text, and the ID is going to be message, and the name is going to be message as well, and the placeholder will be message as well. And similarly I want to put 2 break rows just to separate them, or let's say 1, and I want to have a button which says send. Save that, and you can refresh this, and you can, let's put another line break here. Okay, so now that is here. I want to click the send button. What I want to do is I want this message to be out there on everybody's screen as well. For that we have to actually take the message out of this input and then emit an event, so that everyone receives that event. So let's do that. So first, on click of this event, I want to run some function. Let's say emit data. So we can define that function here. Let's say function emit data. For now, let's say console.log hit to check if this is working or not. I have no console here. So let's just click this. Oh, I have to reload this. So you can see that the hit is appearing on in the console. So that's working. So instead of console logging this, what I want to do is I want to emit an event. You can use socket.emit to emit that event. So what I want to emit here is the message and the username, because we need to know who sent this message. So I would first, let's pull the message from that input. So let's say message is equals to document dot query selector, and I want to select that element. That's a message. Let's put this message, and I want to take the value out of this. So that's message dot value, and then what now I want to do is I want to emit an event. So before even emitting an event, I want to check if this message.length is greater than 0. Then if the message is greater than 0, which means the message is not empty, then I want to send a message to that. I want to just emit an event. So now I can say socket.emit. Let's say we need to emit to a channel. So let's name a channel message. We need to hear with this same channel at the back end also. So let's remember that. And as we have to send a data object as a second parameter. So what I want to send is the message first, which is a message itself, and I want to send a from tag, and this is going to be, let me show this. This is how it's going to be, because if you have observed what we have done in the backend, let me go to index.js. So while we are rendering chat here, we are also sending the username as the data. So that username can be accessed using this syntax. If you have used EJS, then you can do this easily. If you are using some other templates, I think there would be ways to do this. So let's do this, and I also want to listen to that we are doing we are emitting to message, and I want to listen to that message. So for that I can do io.on connection, and I would be getting socket back. So this is just an opening, let's say an opening event for IO. So inside this we can listen to different types of events. For now I want to listen to message and the objects that's coming from them, which is the message and from. Let me put that. That's actually a callback, so we'll be getting a function with data. So let me console.log the message and from whom it is coming from. So let's save this and let's reload this. So let's say hi. So remember my username is name here, so I'm sending hi. Okay, it says cannot read property length. Okay, I think the error was that I was using same ID for div and also for the input. So let's change this div's ID to messages and then save and reload this. And let's say hi here. And let's go to the node screen. And you can see this, the message is hi and the user who's sending this is name. Actually that should have been a better name, but it's okay. The name is name here and the message is message. So now we can use these two variables to store, send this into our Redis cache. And before that I just want to send an event to all other clients saying that the message and the from. I have two options here. I can do socket.emit or I can do io.emit. In this case we should go with io.emit because I want to emit this to everyone. So let's say I want to emit this to message channel. Okay, this message channel must be hearing in the client side, because this would be going to the client side and client side must be listening to that event, and will be sending from and message as data back. And now if you come to the client side and let's create an event, let's say similarly socket.on. Now we have to listen to message and we'll be receiving from and a message from the backend as a callback function with data. And now we can do console.log from and message. We can do this and let's reload both the tabs here and let's say hi, and you can see that the name and hi are being displayed here, and this should be displaying here as well, and you can see that it's being displayed here as well. So every user connected will be seeing this. So instead of just logging this, what I want to do is I want to append similarly what we have done here. We just create an element and we put our text in it, and just we append that to another div. So in this case that div is going to be messages. I just want to put messages in this div only. So what I would do is let me create a message element. Let's close this, and that would be similar to this create element of, we can create whatever we want. In this case let's go with h5, and that message elements inner text would be let's say from column message. And what I want to do is document dot query selector, and I want to select the ID, the div with ID messages actually, yeah, and dot append child, and I want to append this message element to that. Okay, so let's see if this is working. Okay, I'm saying hi now, and you can see that the messages are being displayed here, as well as I think this must be displaying here. Let's say hi here. Okay, I think I did not reload this tab. So yeah, hi here. That must be displayed here. Yeah, it's displaying. We can actually find a better place to show this has joined message, but yeah, I think that will work. So this is being working, but what's missing is the storage, because when I refresh this, all the messages are just lost. So I don't want that to happen. So what we can do is we need Redis for that. So we'll be installing Redis and we'll be storing that and storing the messages in Redis. So let's quit this and we'll be installing. We need to install Redis. And while this is installing, let's open another tab, and you need to have redis-server installed for this because this the Node.js application needs to connect with your internal Redis server. So make sure you have Redis installed on your system, and it must look like this when you start the Redis server. It will be listening to some default port, which there's no need of any configuration. And let this run. Don't do anything, and just open another tab. And you can do redis CLI to get into this shell of Redis, and you can see that it's running on port 6739. That's the default port for Redis. And you can see you can get keys or set keys here itself. We'll be seeing why that is useful. So let's go here, and it has been Redis is installed right now, and let's use Redis to store messages. So first thing is that I want to import Redis. I will say require Redis and create a client for that. So we'll be using this client to to store or to make different to do different operations on Redis. So that would be create client. So we'll be needing this client for this whole application. Where do we even need to use this client? If you go back to application, when we send a message and we click this send button, then our messages are going to the backend, and the backend is sending back to all the clients who are connected to the network. So before sending that event, I want this to be inserted into the Redis. So that's what I'm going to do now. So that is actually here, because when we receive a message, we are just emitting that message to message channel. We are emitting globally, so it goes to all the people connected in the network. I want to create an array in Redis named messages. Let's say we have a messages array in Redis, and that array would be consisting of every element is going to be string in that, of course. And what I want to do is that each string is going to be having a format. Like I want the string, each string in the message to be of the format from and the username, the message. This is the format I want it to be. So what does this mean is that from is going to be the username who sent the message. Let's say username here, or let's say my name, Mano, and colon, which separates the username and the message, and the real message here, hello. So this is going to be the format. Why do we even need this format? We need this because we can separate user and the message in a single string, because we can use the split property in JavaScript to split the string and take the user and the message out, and we can store them easily, right? So that's what we are going to do. No need of any configuration for this. You can just insert them into the array. So the way we are going to do is that you can just do client dot to push elements into an array in Redis. You can do rpush the name of the array and what you're going to push. So in this case, we'll be having from and the username, the message. That's what I need. So yeah, this is single line what we need to do to insert the messages. So let's reload this and let's say hello. Let me change my name. I don't like my name to be name. Let's say hi. And if you go and if you see the backend console, there is no indication of the message being inserted. To check this, is what we can use redis-cli too, and we can actually do get the name of the key. But in this case, our messages is an array, so you have to loop through them. So you can do lrange messages and 0 and -1 to loop through every element. And you can see that there is one element which is a message we have inserted, which is Mano, which is a username, and the message separated by colon. So we are getting what we need. And after this, but when I refresh this, the messages are not being shown, right? I just want to pull them from the Redis server and I want to show them here. So what this send message function is going to be doing is that it's going to loop through the Redis messages array, and then for each message it's going to send a local event, or it's going to emit a local event, and the data is going to be the message. So if you understand what I mean by local message, is that this event will not be affecting every other user, right? So when we are in this case, let's take io.emit. This io.emit is going to emit to every other user in this network. And if you use socket.emit instead of io.emit, then only the person who triggered this event will be receiving that. I think you would be understanding if I implement that better. So let me create that function, and inside this function I would be needing a parameter which is socket. To do socket.emit, we need that socket argument. So now what I want to do is I want to make use of this client variable, and if you remember this, we use the lrange function here. We'll be similarly using this function here as well. So we can do lrange, and this takes 3 arguments. If you see, we have 3 arguments here, so we'll be just putting that same arguments into this function as well. So that's messages 0 and -1. And after this, we will be getting a callback with error and data, and this data is what we will be needing, and this data is what the array is going to be, right? If you console.log the data here, let's see what we are going to be getting. So let me reload this. Okay, let's send a message here. Okay, I think we haven't called the function. Okay, let me call the function here. Whenever a user connects, or let's say whenever user sends a message, let's say send message of socket. And now let's reload this, and let's send a message, hello. And let's go to the console here, and you can see that we are receiving an array with the formatted string, right? And we can use this to send it back to the user. And what I want to do right now, let me comment this. What I want to do with this data is that I want to map through this data, and I'll be getting let's say x is going to be each string, and this x is a single string. If you have used map before, you would be knowing this. And what I want to do is that I want to split, let's say username, and the message is a variable. I want to split this. I would be doing x.split. So what this does is that it splits at this point, which is at this point, and we'll be receiving this and this and 2 different indexes of an array. So we can use that. Let's say you can say redis username. So the first thing is the username, and the second thing is the message, right? So redis username is going to be this username message of 0, and similarly redis message is going to be username message of 1. And now what I want to do is I want to emit an event immediately after taking this, and I want to emit this message to the message channel. If you remember, when we send a message, right, we let me show you that. We do io.emit message, and we send from the message to the client, and instead of doing io.emit, we'll be doing socket.emit, which would be emitting that to this user only. And as you know, we need from and message in that, so let us send from would be redis username, and message would be Redis message, right? That's what it's going to be. Let me tell you what this function is doing. And this function is just looping through every element in this messages array inside the Redis server, and we'll be getting the array back. And what we're doing is that we're mapping through that array, and for each string we are splitting at this point a colon, and we are taking the username and the message and storing it in two different variables and just emitting an event with the same from and message properties. So this socket.emit will be emitting the message to the single user who triggered this event. So let's call this send message function. Another let's say collision of thoughts is that when to call this function. And I don't want to call this function when someone sends a message, but I want to call this function when that user joins the server, right? When you refresh this, when this page appears, that's the instance when you have joined the room, right? When you join the room, I immediately want to call this send message function. So let's see if this works or not. You can see that the messages are coming up, and this must come up for every other user. I mean not for every other user, that's the point. Let's open another console and see if he is receiving this. Let's say another hola there, and name 2. Let's enter the chat, and you can see that the messages are being displayed here, and this is all coming from this Redis CLI, and the messages being stored here, right? So yeah, that's what I was trying to share my thoughts upon. And yeah, there are actually many alternatives to this, or many alternate techniques to this. Instead of just storing on Redis, you can also use some techniques like a cron job, which moves messages from the Redis server to a real database. You could do that. And yeah, there's no constraint to it's just how efficient it's going to be, and in this case it's really efficient because Redis is an in-memory database, so in-memory cache or database, so it's going to be storing everything on a system, and also its persistence. Even if your system is going to shut off and then you on it right back, then the data will not be lost. So that's why Redis is so important when you are designing chat systems. So I think for a pretty small application, Redis is a great choice to start with, because the messages are super fast to receive and to send. And I think when this, as we have done, right, we have combined WebSockets with Redis, I think they make a great pair out of this, and they can, you can customize this in different ways, like creating different rooms or one-on-one conversations. There's so much to do, and you can modify the format of the string. And yeah, thank you for watching, and do like this video and share and subscribe. So yeah, thank you for watching.